It's that time again, folks. It's another entry in Monster Fest 2011. Ooh! This time, of course, it's not a movie. It is a comic. This is a comic that I read a while back. I remember most about it. I didn't reread it to do this review, though, because it's all up here and on Wikipedia. And that, of course, is the sequel comic to this film, Freddy vs. Jason vs. Ash. Groovy. Now, the original idea for this stemmed from a sequel script idea to Freddy vs. Jason, because when it came out and made all that money, they're like, should we do a sequel, should we not? And they tossed around ideas like maybe getting Michael involved, which that might have been interesting. I mean, 2 unstoppable killers versus Freddy. Oh, fuck. Don't I get a break? But this one makes a little bit more sense to me, because Ash has fought demons and other stuff, but now he's fighting a killer that kills people in their dreams and an unstoppable killer with a hockey mask and a machete. And all he has is a fake arm and his boomstick. So, it kind of balances out, I guess, a little bit. Now, of course, the only reason the movie version wasn't made was because of Sam Raimi, and I'm guessing by extension, Bill Campbell? No, Bruce Campbell. And by extension, Bruce Campbell. The reason, I don't know why Bruce Campbell would be, but from what I hear, he's kind of a dick at conventions and stuff. He acts like he's an Oscar-winning actor. Like, I won 5 Oscars 5 years in a row. That's how he acts, from what I hear, which is why I probably wouldn't want to get him to sign something at a convention. I'd probably just, like, take a picture of him from a distance, but I wouldn't, like, go up and have him sign something. No. Now, if I was working with him, that would be a different story, but I'd rather get Sam Raimi to sign something. Him and his brother seem more like down-to-earth people than Bruce Campbell, because what's the other than Burn Notice and the Evil Dead movies, what else has Bruce Campbell been in where he's a main star? I mean, the only other stuff I know him in is that little cameo at the end of Darkman, and then, of course, his 3 cameos in the Spider-Man films, which my favorite one is still the announcer in the first movie. Human Spider, that's all you got, kid? Of course, he was also the French waiter in the second movie. Oh, man. Was it the second? No, the third movie, I don't think it was. Yeah, it was the third movie. Then the second movie, he was that annoying guy at the Playhouse. The pretentious guy. Now, of course, because of that, they said, oh, let's just do a comic, which, of course, Sam approved of that, because comic, a little bit better. Now, it's set about 5 years after the end of Freddy vs. Jason, and over 10 years after the end of Army of Darkness. Now, of course, for those of you who hated Will and Laurie from the previous film, this is a spoiler, they get killed off right at the beginning. Which I have to say, when I read that, I'm like, how did they get killed? And when I read it, I'm like, that's actually pretty good. Which it kind of makes them surviving and makes Laurie's moment at the end of Freddy vs. Jason, welcome to my world, bitch! It makes that kind of meaningless now. But it don't really bother me. They're idiots for going back to Crystal Lake in the first place. To steal a line from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, what are you, ignorant? Pick up the damn keys. Well, ever since the events of Freddy vs. Jason, apparently Freddy has been trapped powerless inside of Jason's mind. How? I don't know. I don't remember if they explained it, but he's just in his mind. Which, that would just be funny. Could you imagine having Robert Englund stuck in your mind? Hey kid, where you going? No, not the pizza, not the pizza! I don't like pizza! Now, he makes a deal with Jason. Unlike last time, he doesn't like manipulate him first, but actually he kind of does manipulate him, but not the same way. It's just funny how Jason first finds him, because Freddy's having sex with a dream version of Jason's mother. I know, that's just funny to say, but it's just funny to... But when I saw that, I'm like, oh god, I could so picture Robert Englund doing this in a movie. And then when the dream Pamela's telling Jason what he's supposed to do, Freddy's all smoking a cigarette. I mean, Freddy's smoking a cigarette. That's just funny. Like I said, I can picture Robert Englund doing that. Well, their deal is that Freddy needs the Necronomicon in the old Voorhees house. As you can see, a connection to that little cameo in Jason Goes to Hell, which I liked. Because even before this, there was all a bunch of fan theories. They mentioned this in the commentary for that movie about, you know, what's the Necronomicon doing there? And they actually go further and actually explain why it's there. And and by extension, it explains how Jason comes back to life. I believe this is considered canon to the movies, so if so, this is the official explanation for how Jason comes back to life. Apparently, somehow, Pamela gets her hands on the Necronomicon, or at least pieces of it. Never explains how the Necronomicon gets there. And she uses it to revive Jason. So that means, technically speaking, Jason Voorhees, the killer of Camp Crystal Lake, is a Deadite. Which, that doesn't bother me, and it would explain why more human Jason in the first couple entries where he's the killer can survive all that stuff. You know, like he got hit in the back of the neck with a machete in the second film. He got hit in the head with an axe in the third film, and he survived that. And I mean, zombie Jason would have no problem. He'd just like shrug it off like an axe to the head and like. But humanoid Jason knocks him out, but he survives it. So him being a Deadite, like I say, I buy it. And he even adds more to it when he comes back as zombie Jason. Now, the deal that Freddy and Jason make is that in exchange for getting the Necronomicon for him, Freddy will find a passage in there to make Jason, this is how they word it, a real boy. Which, when that happens, all it does is make Jason smarter. Which, just think about it. Jason had the mind of a child, and although he was kind of cunning and stuff, he wasn't really, as you can say, intelligent. Like, he could be tricked. Like, in the second film, they trick him with child psychology. But imagine a very intelligent Jason. He's dangerous enough as it is. But a smart Jason. I mean, at one point they even tried to do a trap to him, and he easily sees through it. And he even looks at where they're hiding and does this. It's just, he doesn't point out his finger, he's like, that is just funny to see. Now, as you can guess, how does Ash come in here? Well, he's still working at S-Mart, and he's transferred to a new one at Crystal Lake. And you can tell right off the bat, he hates his fucking boss. I mean, the boss, to steal a line from Knox again, what a dick. And of course, some of his younger co-workers, they're exploiting him, like getting him to buy beer and some other stuff. But when Jason shows up and when they're at a party at the Jason house, Ash springs into action as well. But as you can tell, he's no match for Jason physically. But the action goes as Ash finds out that the Necronomicon is in the house and he has to try to stop Freddy. And it goes in with the whole thing, you know, of using that passage to suck in evil, like they did in the second film. And not to spoil any specifics, but that's eventually what happens, and Freddy eventually becomes trapped in a dimension, which is where he is at the beginning of the sequel to this, Nightmare Warriors. And somehow the Necronomicon is underneath Crystal Lake along with Jason. Now, other than Ash, Freddy, and Jason, there actually is no other characters from the other films, which is kind of a shame. But, well, except Laurie and Will, but I don't know if I count them because they get killed off pretty quickly. But it does its job. It's an interesting read. I found it online. I want to get the hardcover collection. Art-wise, the art is magnificent. I mean, Freddy looks great. Jason looks great. Ash looks great. And if you could find a copy of it, I highly recommend you give it a read, especially if you are a fan of this film. Now, as I think I mentioned earlier, I have not read the sequel, which is called Nightmare Warriors. But from what I understand, from what I've read, there's one word that you can attribute to the second series that describes it to a T. Fan service. The title alone should probably tell you that. Nightmare Warriors. What does that mean? Well, other than the return of Freddy, Jason, and Ash, every character that survived both a Jason and a Freddy movie that has not been killed off yet is in it. We get Dr. Gordon from Part 3. We get Alice and her son from Part 5 of the night. I'm doing the Nightmare films first, obviously. We get Freddy's daughter Maggie from Part 6. From the Jason movies, we get Tommy Jarvis, who was kind of a badass. We get Jason's niece, a great niece actually, and her dad, the Bob V. LeMay character from Jason Goes to Hell. I believe we get the couple from Part 8. I don't remember exactly. Part 7, we get Tina, the psychic girl, which that's scary kind of. Psychic girl going against Freddy and Jason, yeah. I don't know if we get that one girl who was with Tommy in part 6 or not. I don't think we get the character. I don't think we get Jenny from part 2 or the character from part 3, but the ones from after that we do get. And how they all play into the plot from what I read is magnificent. One thing though that's kind of weird about Jason's great niece is that there's something kind of wrong with her. I think. I don't know if she's mentally wrong. I don't know because I haven't actually read it, so I don't know how to explain just from the synopsis. But it's just weird with her. And if I remember correctly, I think Bob DeLamay's character gets killed, but it fits the story, and that might explain why his daughter gets the way she is. Tommy Jarvis, from when I read how he shows up in this comic, is so badass. Of course, and they all have like a little group. Now, the thing that happens with Maggie, with how she is in the movie, you can't really see this, except for maybe that one brief moment when she puts the claw on. But this is spoiler. Apparently she's helping Freddy in it, which I could see that, especially... I could buy that, especially considering that they build it up slowly, that she like creates this group only to help her father destroy it, which is basically it. Which I don't remember if Maggie gets killed or not, but I think she does, which I could see that. But her helping Freddy, I have no problem with that. Especially with that one scene, you know, in part 6 where she puts the glove on. Feels good, doesn't it? Let your daddy show you how to use it. Oh, looks like she's taking him up on his offer. I can just imagine Freddy. Yeah, that's my girl. Kill him. Kill him. Kill them all. I have everything and you have nothing. And of course Jason's still smart in there. And probably one of the weird things about it is that it involves the government trying to use the Necronomicon, which I'm like, how did they find out about the Necronomicon? Then again, I haven't read it, but the ending though kind of does a Dragon Ball Z Trunks time machine thing, in that one of the government characters is sent back in time to the day that Freddy's arrested, and he signs a search warrant in the right place, thus altering history. Now, that's the ending of it, so it kind of ends in a minor cliffhanger. I would love to see them do at least a one-shot comic to see how events would have turned out differently. But that's a fitting ending. I'm gonna double check to see what happens to Jason. Oh, that's what happens. Freddy absorbs Jason's soul at one point to get more powerful before he's knocked into the vortex again. Yeah, Stephanie's the little girl's name, in case you're wondering. But from what I understand, the writers who for the sequel comic, who are Jeff Katz and James Kuhoric, they basically wrote it as a fanboy story, which you can tell from the fan service, and they modeled the concept after the crisis events from the DC Comics, which I haven't read the DC Comics, but I felt that I could see that connection, and just from the synopsis, it sounds like it works. Which I can't wait to get this. I'm probably gonna get it through Amazon one time, and when I actually do read it, I'll give a full review of it. But I'm just mentioning the stuff it mentions on Wikipedia. But it does sound like a fitting sequel to Freddy vs. Jason vs. Ash, which, if that's all they're going to do, that means it turns the Freddy vs. Jason stuff into a trilogy, which... It makes me wonder, if they'd actually filmed Freddy vs. Jason vs. Ash Nightmare Wars as a movie, how much would that have cost to make? Would it have been like $100 million movie? That would have been interesting. And, of course, those two will never become movies because of the reboot craze. And, of course, we got the reboots of Friday the 13th, which was an epic win, and the Nightmare on Elm Street one, which is an epic fail. Why did they not do a prequel like they originally were going to do? I mean, Robert Englund would only have been in makeup probably towards the end if you had filmed it right, like made it mostly about the Springwood slasher. I would have loved to have seen that movie in theaters. But alas, 'twas all for naught. My rating for the Freddy vs. Jason vs. Ash comic is 4.5 out of 5. It's a good read. If you can find a copy of it, I said read it. And that's it.